It's your midday update here on the Football Spy Show. With me on the Spy Wall to discuss transfers is our Arsenal man, my colleague John Cross. Before we go to him, just going to keep you updated on the transfers and deals that could happen before tonight's deadline. This is interesting for Arsenal fans. Sky Sports has been reporting in the last few minutes that the Russian club Anzhi Makachkala are talking to Arsenal over the possible transfer of Andriy Arshavin. Arsenal fans crossing their fingers on that one. Of course, the most fascinating bit of business this morning has been a potential transfer of the midfielder Ravel Morrison from Manchester United to West Ham. Sky Sports also reporting that the Bristol City striker Nicky Maynard is talking to West Ham. Go to the Mirror Football website for details of Manchester City's bid to sign the Roma midfielder David Pizarro on loan. No, you really can't believe clubs when they say they won't be doing any business on the final day of the transfer window. Millwall, we told you before, they've signed Andy Keogh on loan from Wolves on a 2.5-year deal. Another signing for Arsenal, the young Borussia Dortmund midfielder Thomas Eisfeld. He's 19 years old, had a few injury problems. Arsenal have taken him on a 4-year deal. Our reporter James Nursey has been telling us that the defender Danny Collins has turned down a move to Southampton. He's going to stay at Stoke. And one more for you, because lots of our Swiss viewers have been emailing in to tell me that Manchester United are showing an interest in the Swiss Man City defender Frederick Vesely. He's 19 years old and apparently he's extremely highly rated. But we've got John on the Spy Wall to talk transfers, and a good place to start, John, is with the possible transfer of Andriy Arshavin to Anzhi Makachkala. What's your initial impressions of that deal?
Well, I must say they've left it late in the day, haven't they, really? I mean, things are not working for Arshavin at the moment, and really, maybe it's time for a change for Arshavin. I'd just be surprised if that one went through, simply because it's late in the day. These things take a little bit of time. Arshavin has said on several occasions the only club he'd go back to Russia with St. Petersburg. Arshavin certainly knows his own mind, that's for sure. And I just wonder, with Gervinho away at the African Nations Cup at the moment as well, whether Arsenal can afford to let Arshavin, despite his poor form, his current unpopularity with the fans, whether they could let him go at this stage. I mean, there's a real dilemma there, simply because he's got 18 months left on his contract. He's not playing well. They will definitely, I'm sure, sell him in the summer. So if they get a good enough offer now, would that tempt them? It's a gamble, because they've let a valuable member of the squad go, even though he's out of form at the moment.
What do you know about 19-year-old midfielder Thomas Eisfeld? Not a lot is known about him, except that he's had a couple of bad injuries over the last couple of seasons, and Arsene Wenger taking a chance on him. We spoke to Martin Lipton earlier, who said he's not good enough to go into the Arsenal side. What do you think was the thinking behind bringing him in?
Well, I disagree with Laptop there, because, I mean, blimey, if he's injury-prone, a young mercurial midfielder, skillful, a little bit lightweight, then I'm sure he'll fit in very, very well in the Arsenal setup, really, straight away. Welcome aboard. But, I mean, I've got to be honest, it's a bit of a surprise one, that. I mean, they were looking at Mario Götze, weren't they? And they've ended up with Elsfield from the academy. It's not quite exactly what Arsenal fans would have wanted. It's a gamble, that's for sure. That Arsenal like to take a gamble on the younger players, see where they can develop. They've developed some in the past, and maybe, you know, because of his good background at Dortmund, he'll be one for the future and will fulfil that potential which has been held back by injury. But the trouble is, as a PR exercise, I don't think it's one that will get Arsenal fans too excited. So I'm mixed views on that one. I don't think that will go down particularly well. But let's not hold the kid back, because, I mean, he may be a really good prospect for the future and has something to offer. So try and be positive rather than negative at this stage.
We're talking transfers with the Daily Mirror's Arsenal correspondent John Cross here on his Football Spy live transfer deadline day. And while we're talking to John, news coming in of a couple of other potential transfers. Everton have confirmed that Nikic Jelavic, a striker from Rangers, has arrived at the club's Finch Farm training ground complex to undergo a medical and to discuss personal terms. Full details of that on the Mirror Football website. But you were talking about PR, John, and Ivan Gazidis has given an interview to Fox Sports. Martin Lipton was talking about that earlier today, saying that Manchester City would love to be in the position that Arsenal are in now. They're in the latter stages of the Champions League, still in... You've already started laughing, so I won't continue. I'll just let you respond.
Well, I really like Ivan Gazidis. I think he's good. I think he's good for Arsenal. I think he's done a good job commercially and so on. But I've seen the full transcript and actually all the interjections that went on, and I wasn't the only one laughing when he made that comment about Manchester City. Fox Sports employ Warren Barton as their pundit and their expert, and the transcript came across that he would burst out laughing at that point as well. I mean, that really is putting the positive American PR spin on things. That is Arsenal. Well, what three things are they in? They're in the Premier League, but they're in the Premier League race for fourth. They're in the FA Cup. They've got a tricky away tie ahead in the North East now in the fifth round, and they've got the Champions League. And I guess Manchester City are out of the Champions League. That's well and good, but I'm not really sure whether Arsenal fans would, really swap the current setup at Arsenal for what Manchester City are going for. Manchester City are going for the Premier League title. So I do admire Ivan Gazidis' positive PR spin at the moment, but I mean, blimey, I'm not sure it's the wisest thing to say. And maybe a few Arsenal fans might actually be saying, well, why is he actually talking to American TV at this stage and not addressing the English fans and the fans that go week in, week out to the Emirates? So I have to say I probably, can see the frustrations from all sides at the moment, but that really is positive spin times 100, and I'm not sure whether Arsenal fans would really agree at that stage.
Just before we leave Arsenal, where do you think the business or lack of business for Arsenal leaves their chances in the Premier League, as you say, fighting for fourth place, and the Champions League going into the second half of the season?
Well, what I think always amazes me about talking generally about sort of the January window is why on earth do managers, knowing that the season ends in early May, why do they leave it until the last minute? I just defies belief. Arsenal have had a fullback crisis for many weeks now. Why didn't they get Wainbridge done on January the 1st? Why didn't they sign another right back on a kind of a temporary loan deal? Arsenal have the finances. They've got the money to pay a short-term loan fee. They've got the money to do the wages, and yet they scrimp and save. It just really beggars belief, and I think it's disappointing. Arsene Wenger has made it work in the past. He signed Walcott, he signed Reyes. People not Reyes, but he gave them the turbo boost for the invincible season that year. Diaby, Adebayor. There's been some good deals, and Arshavin briefly, I think, as well. And it surprises me with Arsenal with £35 million plus sitting in the bank that they've resisted, and the one they've done is a kid from Dortmund. I think it's hugely disappointing.
Now, you've mentioned finances there, just £27.9 million spent so far this January transfer window. Compare that with £225 million spent around about this time last year. What do you think is the main reason clubs have not spent money this time around?
Well, I always think that January is a difficult one to navigate because you're never going to sign the absolute stellar superstars because they are going to be with Champions League clubs. They're going to be Champions League cup tied anyway. And I think it's generally an emergency signing. I mean, Man United, their sort of couple January deals stick out to me, which are Vidic and Evra, and they've been fantastic. But it took them the rest of their first season to bed in, find their feet in English football, and then really kick on and become two absolute superstars for the Premier League. Arsenal, as I say, have made it work. Man City have made it work in the past. Dzeko, for example, and he's got his distractors, but he scores goals. I just feel that maybe this time around, with the current financial climate, City are well stocked up. Manchester United, you have to wonder, what sort of market they're shopping in now, because they could do with new players, but the type of quality that they need to improve their midfield, I don't think is going to be available in January. So it's a set of circumstances. I thought that Spurs would do a really, really big deal in January, and again, that's fallen short. And to be honest, maybe Harry Redknapp is caught up with other things at the moment. But I still feel that Daniel Levy, I thought he might have tried to do something to give him a turbo boost to try and just get in amongst the top two and really challenge for the title all the way to the end and maybe win the title. As it is, I think they'll challenge to the end, but without a big name signing, something to boost the strike force, I think they'll fall just short, which is a great shame because they play some super stuff this year.
Interesting point you mentioned, Spurs, because news coming into us all the time. You're watching the Football Spy Transfer Show, our live edition of this transfer deadline day. The respected journalist Laurence Julien has been on the Twitter feed saying, I've just spoken to Louis Saha. He is waiting to see what will happen regarding a move to Tottenham on loan. Now, I think for me it would be extremely underwhelming for Spurs fans who expected a real mega signing this January transfer window. I don't know if you agree, John.
Yeah, I expected it. I thought they would do something either on loan or a permanent deal.
Just to clarify, you expected Zaha or a big deal?
No, a big deal. A really big deal. I mean, there was whispers about Kaka, and there was whispers about sort of other sort of big name stars from Spain, and none of that really has come to fruition yet. And I think that Zaha is a good player, but he's a really good player, in fact. But he's an injury-prone player, and that is not the sort of player that I don't think the Spurs need. I mean, Pavlyuchenko, they signed him up for an extra year, put an extension on his contract, really with the intention to sell him and get a good price on him. I think if they could have moved him on, I actually thought that they might do a bit of business on Jermaine Defoe. You might know better than me, Dazza, but I mean, I think Jermaine Defoe needs to be playing week in, week out to really push his claims for Euro 2012. But all those things would have depended on bringing someone else in, another really good striker. I mean, if you're going to sell those sort of guys, you need a really top quality striker to replace those players. And Harry Redknapp has made a career out of juggling and reshaping his squad during windows. And for him to be quiet so far, it is surprising. You know, Zaha, I'm not sure whether that will go down particularly well with Spurs fans. It will go down even worse with Everton fans who need strikers, don't they? I mean, they've got good player, good team, good squad, but they're missing strikers. As for respected Julien Laurence, blimey, I tell you, I love Julien, but when he let me down recently in a football tournament, the respect was on the wane. I have to tell you a little bit about that. But no, Julien knows some of the French guys well, and so he'll be in touch on Zaha, you can be sure.
Just to continue with some of the breaking news that's coming out this morning on this transfer deadline day, the Crystal Palace chairman, Steve Parrish, has been talking to the BBC. He says that Wilfried Zaha, a £7 million bid turned down from Bolton for him, a lot of money to turn down, and Nathaniel Clyne, the defender, both are going nowhere, says the Crystal Palace chairman. He says that they're staying, they're both good players, they want to keep hold of them. A reaction from you, we talked about him earlier off air, and you were as surprised as I was that they turned down £7 million for Wilfried Zaha.
I'll tell you what, Dazza, I think that Zaha looks a really good prospect, but he looks a really good prospect until he reaches the byline or the edge of the box, and then he spoons the crosses or the shots over the bar. I think Zaha has got an awful lot of work and a lot of potential, but it's about fulfilling that. And I think for Palace, in the state that they're in, to turn down £7 million, if that's right, the amount of money, it may be sort of £7 million with add-ons, which wouldn't be so attractive because they might as well take the gamble and then fulfilling the potential of Palace. But if it's £7 million cash, I think that's astonishing. In this current climate where money is tight, even for Premier League clubs, especially for Championship clubs, then I think that's one hell of a gamble. Because I think that Zaha, while he looks a good player, he flatters to deceive a little bit, and I think there's an awful lot of work there to be done. I think he could be a good player with the right guidance, and you have to say Dougie Freedman is a manager with outstanding ability and potential, but it's a big ask to get the best out of him as you're battling away in the Championship. With Clyne, I think isn't his contract running down as well? There would obviously be compensation involved, so if a big money offer came in at the last for Clyne, then I think that might be a different kettle of fish for them. But Clyne, I think a few Premier League clubs I know sort of really like the look of him, and I think they perhaps see him as a little bit more solid and a bit more of a sure bet than Zaha at this current stage. But I've got to say, Bolton, they're up against it in the Premier League dogfight at the bottom, and that's a gamble, and then you can tell the desperation at this stage.
Okay, some of the more outlandish rumours doing the rounds today on this transfer deadline day. Anti-mechanical as well as being in for Tevez. Rumours that they're also in for Colo Torre at Man City. I find it hard to believe as he's away at the African Cup of Nations. Also, that Spurs may well be doing a bit of business, that they could well be trying to sign another couple of strikers. But as John Cross was just telling you, the only striker it would appear that they're in for at the moment is Luis Saha. And just like John, I'd be very underwhelmed. I'm sure a lot of Spurs fans would be underwhelmed at that as well. Now, John, you're going to Wolves against Liverpool tonight. Tell us if you think either side will do any business before the transfer window closes.
Well, I think both are running out of time now. I mean, Liverpool, Andy Carroll and the Carlos Tevez swap, you can see that makes an awful lot of sense. I bet that both sides were really devastated that, to be honest, that came out, because Liverpool and Dalglish in particular has been really trying to reassure Andy Carroll, because I think actually the one thing that Andy Carroll lacks, because I do think he's got ability, is confidence, and the one thing he wouldn't want to be is undermined by thinking that his club want to do business on him. I think it's a bit late in the day now, but hey, listen, we saw last year that things turn around very, very quickly, because I mean that was the deal that really shocked us all. I mean, agents I speak to tell me that really sometimes a real big deal can take 2 weeks. And that's what they class as a last-minute deal, because basically, I know that sort of Arsenal were interested in Götze, and I was talking to someone who sort of told me in the summer that Arsenal were interested in Götze, but they left it too late. And I said, well, last-minute thing. Well, he said, no, they went in sort of mid-August. I mean, that's ridiculous. And that is the sort of timescale that I think you need. The very last minute deals are kind of 2 weeks in the making, and I would think it's a little bit too late now for Andy Carroll to be going anywhere. And Andy Carroll, you have to say, did offer something to Liverpool against Manchester United. He made a difference in that game on Saturday, and if Kenny Dalglish can get the best out of him, get him playing well again, get him working in tandem with Suarez when he comes back, then I still feel that he's got something to offer at Anfield.
Now, Carlos Tevez, many advisors tell us, they've always told us this window, to be fair, that the race to signing would go down to the wire. Smiling again. As far as Carlos Tevez is concerned, where do you see him going before the deadline?
Well, I mean, Anzi could be an option, I guess. I personally don't think they'll do him any favours. I think any loan deal would have to be with a clause to say, with a view to a permanent deal. AC Milan were mooting early in the window, weren't they? £20 million. Well, that falls well short of Man City's valuation. Man City are the only club really in the world, I would argue, that can make Tevez sit and suffer and see out the rest of the season, probably the rest of his contract. And I don't think that City will be of a mind to compromise. I mean, Tevez is really interested in the tactic that he's chosen today to appeal against his fine. I mean, does that mean that he's trying to say to City, listen, if you make me stay, I'm going to make life difficult for you? Or is that because he knows that City won't let him go at this stage? I think we've got until 11pm to see how the day unfolds, but I think there's an awful lot of work, bearing in mind we've had weeks and weeks and weeks of Tevez and soap opera and nothing's been resolved. To expect it to get it done within the next 11 hours is a big ask, I think, and I think Tevez might have to see the season out of City. We'll see, but that one's going to run right till the wire, I think, because I tell you what, a few clubs will fancy their chances of making a very last-ditch effort to get someone in. You can take the risk, of course, if you sign someone, you get the paperwork in, a show of intention, you can risk it and not do a medical, and so therefore, some clubs with enough money, more money than sense perhaps, could take a real last-minute gamble on Tevez if they can get something done, but I'm not sure that it will get done.
Okay, if you're a European football watcher, then you may be interested to know that there are 3 absentees from the Real Madrid training session today. Angel Di Maria, the left winger, Sami Khedira, the midfielder, and Marcelo, the left back. So read into that with what you will. Also, Lokomotiv Moscow, apparently interested in the forward Anthony Stokes, and news coming out of the BBC suggesting that Pato, the striker to PSG from AC Milan, could be back on, which means Tevez, we were just talking about him, could well be revived to AC Milan. I mean, if we're honest, we're all getting a bit sick of Tevez, but I think as far as City are concerned, they really do want to move him on, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I think it would be the best thing for all concerned. I think we've all sat back as kind of football fans, neutral football fans, and applauded the way that City have redressed this player power balance. And I think we've all loved it secretly, to be honest, because you've seen the mercenary. We've all said shame on Tevez. I mean, we're all mad football fans here, aren't we? That's why we're doing it. And to have that ability, to have that chance to play, and then deny yourself over that by a petty feud, by a petty row over money as well. It just beggars belief. And the world has truly gone mad when we see that. But he's got 2.5 years to run on his contract. That's an awful lot of time to see out. So maybe if something can be done. Pato is the rumour to PSG that just would not go away throughout the whole of January. And maybe it's something that could be done. I mean, Pato for me is a wonderful player. He's a silky player, but I mean, if all things were equal and they had both had the same attitude, then I would take Tevez, because Tevez is a fantastic player to watch. He's 100%. He obviously has made up his mind that he doesn't really want PSG, because PSG are the club that got the money, and he'd rather move to Italy. So that makes life difficult for that deal. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens with Tevez. But if you were a manager now, with everything that the baggage that goes with Tevez, would you touch him? I wouldn't touch him with a barge pole.
You're watching the Football Spy transfer show live here on this deadline day. John Cross is our Arsenal man, talking transfers in general with us. And just a bit of news to bring you, just to confirm. Lots of you asking on Twitter and indeed on our email, spy@mirror.co.uk. Players involved in deals done today after midday will not be available for selection for tomorrow's game. So just to answer that question, I know a lot of you asking. Also, a couple of players still being mooted in terms of transfers. The Serbian right-sided midfielder Milos Krasic being linked with a move to Spurs. Not sure if that's going to happen. We do know that he's been offered around to a lot of clubs who've all declined the opportunity to take him. So Milos Krasic, he is a decent player, and I could get his name right eventually by the end of this broadcast.
Well, no, nearly 11 hours now to get it done if he wins Spurs.
But indeed, he has been offered around. Milos Krasic. He's a good player. For the time being, thank you very much indeed, John. We know you're going to go up to Wolves for their game, and you may well give us another few minutes of your time a bit later on. But for the time being, thank you very much indeed.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
You're watching the Football Spy Show, sponsored by our friends at the Car Giant. And remember, we're with you throughout the day up until and beyond the 11 o'clock deadline. If you want to email us, spy@mirror.co.uk. If you want to tweet us, you can go to @mirrorfootball or @mirrordarren. And of course, you can go on via YouTube, the Daily Mirror channel there, and post your comments, your views, your expectations of what is turning out to be an interesting day on this final few hours of the transfer window.